Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. The Economic Survey, the annual document produced by the Chief Economic Advisor before the annual budget is out for this year. The survey, which looks at the trends and prospects for the economy, is talking of a growth in the economy between 7 to 7.5% in the coming fiscal year. The survey has gone into many aspects of the economy, as it normally does. It may be recalled that last year the Chief Economic Advisor spoke about the Indian economy having hit a sweet spot. However, this year, though there is no mention of it, it speaks about achieving the fiscal deficit target and also is optimistic of the economy growing at 8 to 10%, 8% at least in the next couple of years, even as the inflation will be low. Today, we will discuss what the survey indicates and what hints it provides for the forthcoming budget. To discuss this, I have with me Nitin Desai, former Chief Economic Advisor, Gopal Krishna Agarwal, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Pinaki Chakraborty, Professor at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, Dr.Praveen of Center for Economic Studies and Planning at the JNU, and Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, Senior Journalist. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Desai, when you have been there in this position, you have done this before. How do you look at this, the growth figures? Let us talk first of the growth figures which are being indicated. What do you think of it?
Oh, I think the growth figure is okay because, after all, even this year they're showing growth of about 7.5%. There have been some doubts as to how this is calculated. So I don't think there's a serious issue with the growth numbers. And with 30% or so investment, that's not an implausible number. What I think is important about this survey is the hints that it shows about how this growth will be achieved. Because what it recognizes is we have to stimulate domestic demand. And as I read its sections dealing with monetary easing and the fiscal side is very clever. What they've done is they put both sides of the argument. This, if you stick to the fiscal target, this, if you relax it slightly and allow. But the tone of the argument clearly favors relaxing the target. So now if the finance minister relaxes his target, there is an excellent defense available. If he does not relax the target, despite what the survey seems to suggest, then he will get a reputation as a hardliner in fiscal matters and rating agencies will be happy. So I thought it was quite a neat little thing which they worked out. I don't want to say one thing, as somebody who prepared 2 surveys. Do not overstate the extent to which the survey reflects what the budget will contain. The survey is a product of the professional economic advisors, most particularly the Chief Economic Advisor. It is not necessarily something which has a buy-in from North and South Bloc leadership. So I'd like you to keep that in mind.
Yes, and I'm sure every chief economic advisor advises this to journalists like us not to give too much of importance to it and not to see too much into the budget. Not
just that. Your advice. If you notice.
Yes, sir.
See, what we noticed over the past 3 economic advisors who have come from a more academic environment, Arvind Subramaniam, Raghuram Rajan, and Kaushik Basu, if you like, the research and long-term thinking content of the survey has gone up a great deal. And frankly, there's no way any government can implement all of the policy suggestions which are contained in this year's survey, as it could not implement everything which was there in Kaushik Basu's survey or Raghuram Rajan's.
Right.
So the survey has become a document which is much bigger than the preparation for the budget.
Okay, Praveen.
Yes.
So what are the points which this economic survey talks about, which you find it interesting, and you think which the finance minister may reflect in his budget?
No, as regards, I think what Mr. Desai said, that either this or that, on the one hand, on the other, that is something which is of course there. That is whether we should have fiscal consolidation of the kind which was planned earlier or not. That's one thing on which it wavers. But what I found most interesting about it is not something which has to do with the budget, but concern regarding inequality. Now, that is something which he has highlighted, and he talks about how that needs to be addressed. It says that how it's so important to address some of the subsidies which are going into the kitty of the rich.
That is very interesting. That is one of the most interesting things actually.
So some of those issues. Now, will the finance minister go back, let's say, to reading what Mr. Chidambaram had done in terms of thinking of super rich and identifying them and doing something which goes in that direction in a more substantive fashion, etc.? I do not know whether this will be taken up at all, but since you asked me what is it that I found of some interest in this particular survey, which unfortunately I have not had the time to go through in a fuller fashion, but just in terms of some of the highlights, I thought that
I think that point which you have made about eliminating subsidies and tax breaks to the rich and things like that.
Exactly.
It has been dealt with in quite a lot of detail actually.
Right.
Gopal Krishna Agarwal, is your government moving towards that? Is there a hint there about what the finance minister may do as far as eliminating some of these subsidies for the rich, which he's talking about, and also the tax breaks for the rich, which we find every year? Is there such a move? Agarwal? Okay, we'll get back to him. I think there's a problem with the video. Chakraborty, would you the same question to you also. Do you find that interesting? Do you think that this is something which the finance minister may pursue seriously?
I really don't know. But as far as inequality to the tax policy is concerned, I don't think government is going to really tinker with the tax structure to a great extent, because that's headroom for doing that is just not there. And as far as the subsidy is concerned, I think subsidy bill is not very high this year because of the benign petroleum prices. And food subsidy hasn't grown at a very significant rate in the last couple of years. So I don't see that inequality translating
Pinaki,
into budgetary action.
Sorry, I think we got Agarwal back. Agarwal, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The question is, I don't know whether you heard what Praveen Jha was talking about. This aspect in the economic survey, talking about eliminating subsidies, talking about tax breaks for the rich, how it has to be eased out, or is there a hint there about what the finance minister may take up this year?
I did not hear what he said, but I have seen the survey.
Yes.
And I think they have very clearly mentioned that one of the challenge before the government is that there is leakages in the subsidy.
Right.
And they have even mentioned a figure that there is a leakage of around 1 lakh crore on untargeted subsidy that is going on to the category which are not entitled to those subsidies. So therefore, they are said that there should be direct benefit transfer. And this is the infrastructure which the present government has created over a period of time through Jan Dhan Yojana. And it is one of the major plank where government wants to eliminate leakages in the subsidy and go to the targeted people. And we saw in the gas that the government has, LPG gas, government has saved around 42,000 crore. So I think this will be the major area where reform or administrative reforms or leakages will be controlled, whether in the form of urea subsidy, where people are saying that even industrialists are benefiting out of the subsidy and not the actual user.
Right. Okay. I'll come back to you, Gopal Krishna Agarwal.
Challenge which we have to meet.
Pinaki, we were told, this is the last year. This is the last year that the finance minister has to come out with some bold measures, which a lot of people were expecting last year also, which he didn't come out with. So you think that is there any hint or indication of such kind of bold measures which could be taken by the finance minister in the economic survey?
I think there are two aspects to it. One issue with regard to the bold measure that the survey is hinting is that government is going to relax the fiscal deficit target to increase capital expenditure. But I don't know whether that is a bold measure. Second issue, I thought something that could come out in this budget, I would have expected, is that central government will go ahead with its own GST.
That there is no talk of that.
There is no talk about that. So these are the two major measures. If not two major measures, the second one, if it comes through, that would actually help the manufacturing sector and simplify the tax systems. As far as the fiscal deficit level is concerned, I think there are two major risks which the survey doesn't mention. But I must acknowledge it's a very well-written survey and well-argued and quite balanced in many respects. But the two issues that it hasn't mentioned is, one, that when we are talking about increasing the fiscal deficit target, what is going to happen to the revenue deficit has never been mentioned.
Has not been mentioned.
It has not been mentioned. And we are talking about a 0.7% of GDP hike in the pay commission award and the war OP. So if that happens, you are going to have a fiscal deficit which is higher to accommodate large revenue deficit. I think that part will have to be acknowledged. Second point, this survey actually hides the capital expenditure part in a very interesting way. It says the general government capital expenditure has gone up. The general government includes the states. Now, states' capital expenditure has not gone up today. States' capital expenditure has been growing since 2005-06. And states' capital expenditure before that, before 2005-06, center's capital expenditure as a percentage of GDP was higher than states. Now, state spends around 2.58% of GDP as capital expenditure. Center spends around 1.5%. Now, this is a long-run trend. It hasn't happened today. So the point which I'm trying to make here, that there are structural weakness in central finances, which actually needs to be addressed. I think the survey, of course, talks about that they have not been able to do GST, which is a setback, and that's a good thing. There is a candid confession to that. But I really do not know whether the improvement in the tax collection that the survey highlights, that we have met our tax targets, how much is due to the...
Not just met, they're saying that they're going to...
Yeah, exceeding the tax target. How much is due to the ARM, because we had a cess of 0.5% on Swachh Bharat, on the service tax, which gives a large part of your revenue. And then on top of that, you have continuously kept your union excise duty very rigid on the petroleum products.
Exactly.
And so all these issues
kept
will have to
it.
be seen.
Yes.
I don't see very candid assessment of these aspects in revenue mobilization. Those aggregate numbers don't mean much to me.
Paranjoy?
You know,
no, what you tell me what are the highlights you think,
right.
and then as far as the fiscal deficit is also
I'll take a step back first. As Mr. Nitin Desai earlier pointed out, you know, what is interesting is Dr. Arvind Subramaniam, like two of his immediate predecessors, Dr. Kaushik Basu, Dr. Raghuram Rajan, in a sense are outsiders. There's something common. They've all been educated in the US. They were not part of the system in a sense, you know, and you know, they can always go back to an educational institution or a World Bank or a, you know, as happens. So the point is, the finance minister may or may not even accept what he's trying to say. This has been the trend again, but as has been pointed out by Praveenji, like good economists, you haven't met a single one-handed economist. Have you ever? As the old saying goes, one hand, on the other hand, they give you both sides of the story. So the same...
They're somewhat like lawyers.
Well, no, the lawyers are different. It doesn't matter who loses or wins in court. The lawyers always win. No, but in the case of the economists, you know, they too always win because, you know, they say we've given this argument, we've also given the other argument. It's like the sweet spot thing. You know, he says that's what's the latest thing? He says for now, but not indefinitely, the sweet spot created by a strong political mandate, but recalibrated to take account of a weaker external environment, is still beckoningly there. Good words, clever words. You can mean different things to different people. For instance, you look through the same survey and you can find things which you can arrive at a completely different kind of conclusion. And I'll give you two examples. Look at, for instance, in one particular page where the government has, and it's very good, it's page 108 of the first volume, where you compare the India's share of taxes as a percentage of GDP.
With China.
Or with China, with all major countries.
Yes.
With all major countries, and you'll find something interesting. India is always at the bottom. Whether it be tax to GDP ratio, whether it's expenditure on the social sector. So it's interesting that the same set of statistics or the same set of data, it's the proverbial, the way you interpret it. So I'll tell you, I'll just read out to you one paragraph, which says, he said GST, it's been elusive, etc. Disinvestment, fallen short of targets. Strategic sales not happened. Why? You've not been able to privatize. There's no political consensus of privatize. Your markets are in a mess. They're going up one day, coming down. Subsidy rationalization, next work in progress. That means much more to happen. You've done the easy part. Agarwal ji, it's 29,000 crores LPG, not 42,000 crores, what you mentioned. But the point is, this is the easiest part of the story. You try and do it for urea. You try and do it for kerosene. You try and do it for the whole lot of other major stuff. Do it for power. It's not easy. It's very tough. Secondly, you're seeing corporate and bank balance sheets are in a mess. You're
Completely.
saying private investment is not
But
divided.
that has been dealt with in great detail, actually.
Precisely. So the same set of data which is presented in the economic survey, like a good economist, I can come to a diametrically opposite conclusion that what,
No, but what is your conclusion?
My conclusion is that it has given the state of the economy has been given in considerable detail. It's how you choose to interpret the data. The glass can be half empty or the glass can be half full. I can say that, look, the international economic environment is a huge mess. And I am not as optimistic as Dr. Arvind Subramaniam in saying its impact on India. Growth. Even if we grow at 7.5%, even if he says we have the potential to grow at 10%, will it create, as he says, good jobs?
That is exactly
those things?
He talks about good jobs, not
That's
just
correct.
jobs,
Not
good
just
jobs.
Good jobs.
Good jobs
Organized
and
sector
in
jobs.
organized sector.
Yeah, that's correct. Well-paying jobs,
Yes.
with security, etc.
So he's talking about the right things. Mr. Desai, the chief economic advisor is talking about the right things. His heart seems to be in the right place when he's writing this report. But the fact is that how much of what he's saying is something which the finance minister has to take note of. Paranjoy thinks that he may not even take any of the any of the advice or suggestions.
No, I don't. It's quite likely, but I don't think it's likely because remember this: a chief economic advisor is also a major advisor when it comes to budget formation. So one expects that he will be giving this advice even in the narrower councils within the government which deal with it. Let me take one thing, where several people mentioned this reference to inequality. I was one of the very clear signals I see in the survey is a strong argument which don't change exemption limits of income tax because that's the only way you'll be able to increase the base.
Right.
And he has said another place he has identified saying that the 20% tax rate applies in the 99th percentile of income distribution. So that's clearly a message which is saying that you have failed to basically broaden your tax base to include people who clearly have the potential to pay tax. So I think this is some signal. And my problem
So what is the
I
signal?
seem to,
Sir,
I tend to agree with most of what Arvind said.
Sir, sorry to intervene. What is the signal on the tax front? You think that what do you expect the finance minister to do on this front in the light of what has been said in the economic survey?
I would say that the signal I get from this, when the chapter on fiscal capacity particularly, is do not increase exemption limits or lower tax rates anywhere, and do not expand the various savings write-offs, etc., etc. This is a signal I get. Now, whether Mr. Jaitley will do it or not, let us see.
Okay.
Whether he because every budget there is pressure from the political process कि थोड़ा कुछ दे दो 80cc बढ़ा दो ये बढ़ा दो वो बढ़ा दो. So I don't know whether he will stand firm on this. I think he can afford to stand firm.
Okay, but sir, the question
on
the question of the
tax rate.
Sir, the question of fiscal deficit, what Pinaki was pointing out about the kind of, some people have even mentioned that there's some amount of window dressing which has been done there, and that whether this fiscal deficit is going to be controlled by curtailing the expenditure. What do you see on that front?
I think he has to increase public. That signal is very clear. It's there in the survey. It's been there in many statements. That there will be an increase in in public investment. I don't think he has much scope for cutting anywhere. In fact, he has to accommodate the pay commission. He has to accommodate OROP now. So I don't think he has much scope for cutting back on anywhere. I suspect that some of this will come by an increase in the service tax. That is not mentioned here very clearly, but I would say that probably that is how we will cover the gap. And the argument there will be, we are preparing for the GST and bringing the taxation of services back to that. Incidentally, there's another point here in the survey. He talks about doing something to tax farm incomes.
Exactly.
And he also talks about taxing of realty, property. Now, it's not very clear because rental income is taxed. It's part of person's income and he pays tax on it. So what exactly is envisaged, I'm not sure.
Okay. That's interesting, sir. Actually, Agarwal, Mr. Agarwal, the question is that, you know, is the finance minister going to take some bold measure? One of them, you know, which is being hinted about is taxing farm incomes, taxing agriculture incomes. You think that is the time for that has come, and you think that your government is willing to take that risk?
No, I don't think the agriculture income taxation on the agriculture sector, the time has come, because it is constitutionally also not permissible. And at present, this budget focus, as the FM and the PM has mentioned, that major focus will be on this budget will be on the agriculture sector. Our agriculture sector needs lot of support, and it has not picked up as it should have been. And
but there has been a negative growth. Actually, they chose a negative growth this year.
Yes, and there was a consecutive 3 monsoons which have failed. So therefore, they were not good. So this time, the agriculture sector needs more support and investment in the rural economy. I think my take from the survey is they have said that the fiscal consolidation has been good at the government level, and they should go for massive investment as has been done, which will help into building the infrastructure. So government will focus on rural infrastructure, which will catalyze the economy and create demand. That is one important thing. Another important take that the survey says is on the banking sector reforms. It needs much reforms on the banking sector with regard to NPA and other things. So therefore, I think the agriculture sector and controlling NPA and solving the NPA problem and increasing investments, these 3 will be the focus which survey points out, and the government will definitely look into these sectors.
Okay. Praveen, you know,
as regard to employment generation, railway budget has also taken care of many things.
Okay. Praveen, you know, the allegation against this government in the last 1 year, since the Bihar results have come out, or they themselves seem to have come to realize that, you know, they were seen as anti-farmer in the last 1 year, because of which they may have suffered the kind of defeat which they suffered in Bihar. So you think that, you know, that anti-farmer, to remove that anti-farmer image, there are hints in this survey which Mr. Agarwal is also talking about?
Not really. I mean, I think we will see what happens in the budget, but I don't think there is anything in the
because the focus on agriculture.
It talks of the focus, but then, I mean, you know, that doesn't mean very much, in the sense that unless you
has there been because last year agriculture has not been sector has not been good. It has suffered a negative growth. So why has it happened? Is there any clarity on that?
Clarity has been there for quite some time. I mean, there are 2 sets of reasons: one internal, policy driven, etc., the other external. Now, it is true that externally things have been bad, and that has contributed to it in a significant fashion. But internally also, we know that it's not only a continuation, but in many ways a worsening of the policies if you compare it with the earlier regime, vis-a-vis agriculture, rural sector in general, and so on and so forth. And in fact, if you remember, even policies such as Narega, the kind of remarks which had been made in the last...
Earlier, so, not anymore.
but yes, you're right. But you know, there's lot of, one can say, wishful thinking. For instance, Paranjoy talked about them being outsiders in some sense. Arvind Subramaniam and some of his predecessors. He is absolutely right, but in a different sense. For instance, he talks of agricultural income tax. You
Right.
think anything like that is feasible in India?
Before Punjab elections.
That, and in any case, you're talking of 90% of...
No, that's why we should take Mr. Desai's warning seriously.
True, true. Likewise, talking of expanding the tax net from 5.5% of earning individuals to more than 20%.
Yes.
Now, how do you do these things?
This expansion, widening of the tax base is something which we have been hearing for the last 20 years. How much of it has been successful? We're still talking about a 4% tax
Yes,
base.
but the last point in the context of the question that you asked me, agriculture, rural India is in a deep, deep crisis right now.
Right.
Government has acknowledged it. And the kind of effort which is required, I mean, it will be nowhere, take it from me, in the budget, it will be nowhere close to
the kind of
crisis and challenge that we have
and the kind of
right?
things which it needs to be done. Pinaki?
Yeah, I think on the issue of expanding tax base, I think it's a very complex issue. One budget cannot do much. But if we look at our expansion of the direct tax base, it is really not that impressive. We always say that the 5% of the earning members actually paying taxes. So in that context, I don't say it is going up 20% in the next 1 year. If that happens, then our tax should be 40%.
In all fairness, they're not talking of in 1 year.
But the point here is, if we are talking about expansion of tax base, I think three issues will have to be taken into consideration. And that has nothing to do with exemption or the issues of reform in a large sense. I think these are incremental which have to be done. I think we need to have a modern tax administration. We collect taxes through targets. We tell that you collect from circle, you collect this much of taxes. I think we have to move away from those processes to a modern process of tax administration. And also, it is very important to understand that in most of the developed countries, where there are good tax administration, there the tax administration is specialized on functional lines. Not one person doing, if a person is doing audit for taxes, he will only do the audit. Here, a person who is specializing in administration, audit, next day he is transferred to assessment. I think that kind of processes does not mean budget or economic survey.
You're talking of some structural
there are structural changes that are required. On the last issue of GST, I would like to mention that if the government is thinking mobilizing more taxes through service tax, because that is buoyant and it's understandable, but that has got a serious implication in terms of getting GST, through with the states in the next 1 or 2 years. Because already your GST rate is 14.5, which the Swachh Bharat says. Now, if states will come, they will also tax. So, are we talking of a service tax rate, which is now 14.5, to become, if the state taxes added to it, 25, 20, 30%? I think if the central government wants to mobilize more taxes through GST, they should reduce the rate, come to 10%, and then keep that room available for the states so that they can negotiate and have GST faster.
Okay. I hope the government listens to you. Paranjoy, very quickly, we're running out of time.
We don't know.
Okay. Yes, Gopal, Krishna.
Mr. Nikam, one point I want to make.
Yes, Mr. Agarwal.
I want to tell that this, the important thing from the survey is that it has made the government very comfortable at this stage, because it clearly says that the government in the current scenario has the direction of the government decisions are on the right track, whether with regard to investment, whether with regard to fiscal consolidation. So I think the government is now comfortable that it is moving in the right direction, and the direction on the economy where decision which is taken. So it will take more bold decisions with regard to all the steps that already government has been provided.
We have just 3 days to, we'll know what is it. Yes,
Girish,
very quickly.
What Mr. Agarwal is saying, the reason why the government is comfortable is because it has kept 3/4 of the gains from the lower oil prices and passed on only 25% to the consumer.
That's right.
That's point one.
Yes.
That's the single biggest reason for the comfort.
Absolutely.
And whether it's your fiscal deficit or your indirect taxes have gone up by about 33% thanks to this.
Right.
So now the question is whether Mr. Jaitley will listen to what Dr. Subramaniam has said. We'll know on the 31st. But as of now, it seems, it's all very, very nice statements, but it's how you choose to interpret it. At the end of the day, it's political compulsions, whether Mr. Jaitley will decide to tinker with the tax rate, or whether he'll follow in the footsteps of Mr. Chidambaram, and there'll be more of the same.
Okay, I think on that note, we need to end. We have a couple of days to see what exactly Mr. Jaitley is going to do, but it is an interesting economic survey. It's also a very good research document, which anybody can look at and learn a lot from. But how much the finance minister will take out of it is something which we'll have to wait and watch. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue, the big picture, same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.